Ready? Yeah. It's just like saying, I don't know. No, sir, we're waiting on you now.
I know. It's on YouTube. All right, we're good.
Okay.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2024 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December of 2023, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Right.
Here.
Daffus. Luca,
Here.
Single.
Here.
Mayor Adams.
Here, thank you.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, whereas that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body through all of its regular and special meetings.
Moved.
Second.
Scripe,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. May I ask everyone to stand for a salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you don't mind, remain standing. Unfortunately, this is like every meeting we have. But tonight we have a moment of silence for 52-year Maplewood resident, husband of Sabra Sabin, who was on the Board of Ed, and father of Chris Sabin, who is also on the Board of Education. He's a Maple Leaf Volunteer Award winner, attended every Maplewood Veterans Day program, and passed away this week. He just loved Maplewood, so I ask for a moment of silence for Ed Sabin. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 16th Township Committee meeting, Township of Maplewood. We have a couple of proclamations this evening, one for Robert McCoy, better known as Bob McCoy, and one for Youth Week. Boards and committees, there's no items. Presentations, we had a presentation item on for community energy plan, but that's moved to a discussion item. The other presentation is a feasibility study for the creation of a stormwater utility for Maplewood. When we have public comment, agenda items only. We have one ordinance on final passage, actually two ordinances on final passage. One for establishing a code of conduct for municipal facilities and events. The other is to amend the chapter 123 of the Code of the Township for municipal pool fees. Introduction of the bond ordinance for capital improvements. And then we have no reports from departments. We have administrative reports. We have reports from elected officials, Committee Member Engel, Deputy Mayor Kripe, Committee Member Daffus is not here tonight, and Committee Member DeLuca. discussion items, code of conduct ordinance, demolition ordinance, Maplewood Community Energy Plan, inspired by Somerset Development. It's an authorization to negotiate proposed changes to redevelopment area 3 and the Greenway, which will be Ms. Engels. And then we have the consent agenda and public comment on any subject matter, and then we will adjourn. So with that, I'll move on to the podium down there and ask Mr. McCoy to join me while I honor you tonight. On, yes? Okay. Now stand, wait, you should probably stand next to me. This is kind of weird. Here, come, it's awkward.
Yeah.
So we are honoring you tonight. Well deserved. This is a proclamation honoring Robert McCoy for 2 decades of exemplary service to Maplewood Township. Whereas Robert McCoy has dedicated over 20 years of his life to serving on Maplewood Township Environmental Advisory Committee, demonstrating unparalleled commitment to leadership. And whereas Bob has served as the municipally appointed chair of the committee for an impressive 19 years, showcasing his steadfast dedication to sustainability initiatives. And whereas Bob's exceptional contributions to sustainability have positioned Maplewood Township as a pioneer in environmental stewardship, leading to the certification by Sustainable Jersey in 2009 and maintaining certification ever since. And whereas Bob's visionary leadership has been instrumental in the implementation of numerous programs aimed at reducing solid waste, cutting greenhouse gas emissions, promoting energy efficiency, and supporting renewable energy initiatives within Maplewood Township. And whereas Bob's tireless efforts extend beyond administrative roles as he actively participates, I know firsthand, in hands-on activities like the annual Maplewood River cleanup, where we've all gotten dirty and wet cleaning stuff up. That's not in here. I just added that. Exemplifying his dedication to environmental preservation at the grassroots level. And whereas Bob's expertise and advocacy have been recognized on a statewide level with his involvement in the Sustainable Jersey Energy Task Force and his frequent speaking engagements at events such as New Jersey Sustainability Summit. And whereas Bob's unwavering optimism, fueled by a profound belief in the possibility of positive change, serves as an inspiration to all, as he continues to champion sustainability efforts and advocate for a cleaner, greener future. And whereas Bob's early experiences, shaped by a childhood spent in diverse environments across the globe, have instilled in him a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of social justice and environmental sustainability. And whereas Bob's leadership extends beyond municipal boundaries, as evidenced by his instrumental role in the formation of the Sustainable Essex Alliance Energy Procurement Cooperative, fostering collaboration among neighboring communities to advance renewable energy goals. And whereas Bob's personal commitment to sustainability is reflected in his own lifestyle choices, definitely, from reducing his home energy's consumption to his early adoption of solar technology, setting a shining example for others to follow. And whereas Bob's impact on Maplewood transcends his environmental advocacy, as he and his wife, Laurel Kearns, have been integral members of the community, enriching it with their shared dedication to social advocacy and environmental causes. See, you've done so much. It's like the longest proclamation I've ever read. Now, no, don't be. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Nancy Adams, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of my colleagues on the Maplewood Township Committee, do hereby honor and commend Robert McCoy for his outstanding contributions to environmental sustainability and his unwavering dedication to the betterment of our community. Thank you. This is for you. You got a picture. Yeah. No, you hold it not in my face. Remember, I'm short.
Yeah.
You can tell we've worked together a little bit. You good? All right. Would you like to say a few words?
Just, the only thing I want to say is thank you. I mean, I'm, you know,
Of
it's,
course.
you know, I mean, it's good to be appreciated and I do feel very appreciated, not just here, but in general. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is, I think all these people here are part of the team, and it's really not I mean, it's an individual recognition. I appreciate that, but really throughout this period, it's always been I mean, I don't think any of these things you said, you know, I did by myself. They were always members of the Environmental Advisory Committee, the Green Team.
Am I gonna have to argue with you here?
Yeah,
Because you
No.
have led this, you know, you've led it.
yeah. Okay, so I'll
Say
accept that.
thank
Thank you. And I did want to include one of the things about this is, you know, because there's statewide recognition on some of this, and a lot of that has to do with the township committee, the town employees, and, you know, who are, you know, who've never been a challenge. I mean, when we go to other places, you know, you have governing bodies and you have township staff that are resisting sustainability efforts. Here, it's how can we do it better? So,
Absolutely.
so that, you know, that's an important part of it. So,
Yeah, well, an
anyway.
important part of it, if I might argue with you a little more, is your knowledge and the information you have. I learned so much from you in the, 8 years or 7 years I was liaison to environmental advisory, and that has fueled and inspired me to move toward more sustainable things. And so you
Yeah.
do have an
Okay,
influence,
okay.
even though people help you,
Yeah.
like we all help, but
Yeah.
it's because of your expertise, so.
Okay, thank you. Do I get to keep
No,
this?
thank
Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Bob. Great, well deserved, well deserved. So we have another proclamation for Youth Week. Committeewoman Engel.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks has designated May 1st to 7th, 2024 as Youth Week to honor America's junior citizens for their accomplishments and to give fitting recognition of their services to the community, state, and nation. And whereas BPOE South Orange Lodge number 1154 will sponsor an observance of this week in tribute to the junior citizens of this community. And whereas no event could be more deserving of our support and participation than one dedicated to these young people who represent the nation's greatest resource and who, in the years ahead, will assume the responsibility for the advancement of our free society. And whereas our youth need the guidance, inspiration, and encouragement that we can give in order to help develop those qualities of character essential for future leadership and go forth to serve America. And whereas to achieve this worthy objective, we should demonstrate our partnership with youth, our understanding of their hopes and aspirations, and a sincere willingness to help prepare them in every way for the responsibilities and opportunities of citizenship. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Deborah Engel, on behalf of Nancy Adams, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, and the full Township Committee, do hereby proclaim the first week of May as Youth Week, and urge all departments of government, civic, fraternal, and patriotic groups, and our citizens generally to participate wholeheartedly in its observance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Engel. Now we're going to move to a presentation for our potential creation of stormwater utility in the township. So, Mr. DeLuca, you want to
Yes.
lead that?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as you were talking and had Mr. McCoy up there, I was thinking with Mr. McCoy saying how on board the township is. When you look at this ordinance tonight, we're going to be talking about the community energy plan. We're talking about this stormwater utility. We have a bond ordinance, which talks about putting money in for electric buses. We have a resolution to set up a tree fund. We're talking about the Greenway. So sustainability, both environmental and social sustainability is throughout all of what
It
we
is.
do. So,
It's ingrained.
and thank you for all that you have done to do this. So tonight, we are going to be having a presentation. I just want to say a couple things before to sort of tee it up. You know, climate change is real. It absolutely is real, and we face it here in Maplewood. Everyone knows it. We feel it every day. Our storms are more severe. Increasingly, our storm sewers are overtaxed and we're not able to get the water out. Our pipes, our culverts, our discharge locations, they were built 100 years ago. And now is the time that we start to future-proof our storm sewer system by improving capacity and efficiency. And we're talking about stormwater, which is different than our sanitary sewers. And I think that's important to make that distinction so we understand that. So stormwater is the runoff from rain. It's the water that runs down our streets, runs down our sidewalks. Some of it comes off of our roofs, through the gutters, out into the street. And on all of our streets, we have pipes underground and we have catch basins, which are to catch this water, put it into pipes, and take it out to some of the creeks and rivers we have around town. And then eventually it goes out to larger bays and rivers downstream. And that's our stormwater system. And then we have our sanitary system. And the sanitary system is different. It's a closed pipe system. When we discharge, either we flush a toilet or we put something down the sink or a washing machine, it goes out a pipe and goes into the sanitary sewer. And that's a different piping system. And on the sanitary side, we've had a sewer fee for a very long time because we understand the importance of reinvesting, not only in our system here, but also in the treatment plant in Elizabeth. So back in a couple of years ago in 2022, Maplewood applied for a technical assistance grant to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to help us think through our stormwater management. How are we going to get this rainwater off of our streets, out of our yards, out of town as efficiently and better than we're doing right now? So this technical assistance grant was received, and we've been meeting the past few months with representatives from an international engineering firm, Arcadis. And so we're going to have a presentation to hear about the feasibility study for the creation of a stormwater utility for Maplewood. And you'll hear about that. You'll hear about other municipalities around the state who are also considering this. I think it's worth saying, and you're going to hear it in the presentation, but I just want to say it up front, that no municipality in New Jersey has yet to adopt a stormwater utility. So we are on the cusp here. We're really ahead of it. And I think we want to do this in a thoughtful manner, because not only do we want to address the problem here, but if possible, as we have in the past, serve as a model for other municipalities.
Right.
That's important. We've done that in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to ask our presenters from Arcadis. We have Anthony Dill here. He's program manager who's here in person. And then Richard Gruhl is on Zoom. He's a principal engineer. Is he going to be joining us?
I think
And there he is. He's right. He's looking over your shoulder, so be careful.
he's letting me do it.
Okay, so Anthony and Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
I just want to introduce Vishal Shah here too. He's a contract manager for the work we do under the DEP.
You're going to have to get close to that microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There you go. Is that better?
Yep.
Well, yeah, thank you for the introduction. It seems like we're in the right place, where you're thinking about the environment and stormwater. So it's really nice to see. There are many communities in New Jersey that are currently evaluating stormwater utilities, some through the technical assistance grant, as you are. We're managing a series of these, as well as some others are. And I know a few others along, that aren't through the same program. So it is being evaluated.
So Patrick, I think we want to put up, okay.
Okay.
So
So,
if you want to turn, you can,
well, I'll kind of
there you go.
part turn. I can see a screen there. So
Okay.
I got a cheat screen there. So, this is our agenda. We'll go over just a brief background of kind of why we're here, what we're looking at, and then we'll step through these other parts of setting a rate and talk about a little bit about credit policy, which is something that's actually required by the legislation in other states. It's sort of optional. Some communities have credit policies, some don't. So I'll just touch on that. And then we'll give you some examples of the fee and where we're going from here. So, what in the basic sense is a stormwater utility? It's a public utility that collects revenue, charges fees for the purpose dedicated to stormwater maintenance and improvement of your stormwater system. So those funds come in and aren't to be used for other things. They're coming in just for stormwater. And Mr. DeLuca gave some of the background there, but in 2019, the state passed the New Jersey Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act. I call that the enabling legislation. You might hear me refer to that. And then, as he said, you applied for the technical assistance grant. And in late 2023, Arcadis was identified to partner with you for this study, which we kicked off in January. So why do we need stormwater utilities? Well, we have aging infrastructure, increasing regulatory requirements. Usually each MS4 permit cycle that comes out, there's something new in there, some additional obligation, whether it's to reduce stormwater pollutants or other types of things. So you'll tend to see that over time. We see that in other states as well. Each time it comes around, there's something new that you got to do, and it's usually not in your budget. And we're seeing, increased intensity of rain events and more stormwater just, really to manage. And kind of most importantly, we're seeing throughout the country, stormwater is finally starting to be recognized as a utility, as electric, natural gas, wastewater, drinking water, all these things that have had dedicated funding sources forever, because, you need to have that to do sustainable management of these utilities. And people are finally starting to recognize we need to consider stormwater the same way and have dedicated funding. So the benefits of funding the stormwater utility through a fee rather than just through, taxes in the general fund is that money is dedicated to stormwater. So we can plan projects long-term and know the money is actually going to be there. If we want to plan a big project and bid it out, that the funds are going to be there next year. And if we have that consistent revenue, we can also finance things, knowing that you may be some bigger projects you can't afford all at once, but you could borrow that money and then pay it off over time, knowing you'll have that funding there to do that. A credit policy, which is required by the enabling legislation. And that's basically a way a property owner can get a discount off their bill if they manage stormwater on their property, if they have certain things that qualify. And in order to get that credit, they have to properly maintain those facilities and typically provide periodic reporting, evidence of such. So it can provide for an increased maintenance of those things. And in some cases, even some voluntary upgrades, say, hey, if I improve the management on my property, I can get a discount off my stormwater bill. And then one other thing is being a functioning stormwater utility and having a consistent revenue come in can help position for grants or other types of funding, because they tend to like to see that they know that money is going to be used in an efficient way. And if you're already in the process of having a stormwater utility, that can help you in the future. So as you know, you have a stormwater system, right? There's 1,800 inlets. There's almost 40 miles of stormwater pipe. All these different components of the stormwater system have to be maintained forever, right? So you need to have a consistent source of revenue to do that in the long term. Now, there's been a lot of projects that have gone on here related to stormwater. We have, every time we have severe rain events, there's usually erosion that creates some new problem for us somewhere. And you can see these are the types of projects, and really the money, it starts to add up. We spend $100,000 here, $200,000 there. It's money that needs a source of funding. And as we look forward into the future, we can see there's quite a few needs that have been identified. Some of these are annual needs, dealing with discharges from property owners that have sump pumps or things that need to be managed, that stormwater, up to major flooding projects and other just reinvestment into the stormwater system. So you can see this adds up to over $1 million a year in the next 5 years of needs to be met. So when we look at rate structures for how we charge fees, typically we look at impervious area, which means rooftops, parking lots, pavement, those types of hard surfaces that don't let water infiltrate into the ground. And properties that are undeveloped and sort of natural vegetated or wooded state are typically not charged a fee. Now, the legislation in particular says the fee has to be, based on a fair and equitable approximation of the stormwater runoff. but it doesn't have any other specifics on how you do that. And as you know, there's no flow meter on each property to measure the stormwater that comes off. So that's why we look at the impervious surfaces as sort of an indicator of how much runoff is likely to come from a property. And just as a final note there, as we create the rate structure, we're really trying to find the right balance between precision and accuracy, getting everybody's bill, just right, versus simplicity and ease of management. We don't want it to be so cumbersome or complicated that one, nobody can understand it, or two, it's too much administratively burden to manage, and you spend too much money managing that. So we're trying to find that right balance, and we think we've done that with what we'll share with you here in the next slide. This right here just shows within Maplewood the distribution of impervious area on single-family residential properties. So not everybody has the same amount of impervious surface, and everybody's house is the same size, but it shows you a fairly tight bell curve centered around the weighted average, which is 3,213 square feet. That's the average amount of impervious surface on a typical residential property here in Maplewood. Sometimes I've seen this curve for other communities where there's a big bulge out at the end or something. Maybe there's big estates with tennis courts or whatever. I don't know. But here we have a nice curve around here, and it shows a pretty good distribution for the fee structure that we've looked at. So as we mentioned, the ERU is 3213. The rate structure we've tentatively been discussing is where everyone would pay a minimum of 1 ERU. That's sort of a base charge or a base fee that contributes, that has a developed property with the impervious surfaces into the system. Now, if you have more impervious surface than the typical residential, you would pay more. And we're looking right now at increments of half ERU. And the reason we're looking at the half ERU increments is sort of recognizing the precision of which we're measuring this from aerial imagery and stuff. We don't want to get down to tenths or hundreds of ERUs because it's just hard to get it that accurate, or the amount of effort you have to spend to get everybody's that accurate is not, may not be justified at this time. And it also reduces the number of appeals. If you start billing down to accuracy, it's more likely someone might appeal their square footage on their lot. These are just some examples of when you do the calculation. If you measured someone's impervious surface on a property, we divide it by the 3,213 square feet. That's the ERU value, the typical residential amount of square footage. And then it gives you a number, and we round those to the 0.5. So it just shows, like on the bottom, if you had 8,900 square feet divided by the 3,200, you get 2.79. That would be a bill of 3 ERUs. In other words, they would pay 3 times as much as the typical or base unit. This rate structure sort of simplifies things, especially on the bottom end. Over 5,000 residential properties just pay that base unit. So rather than trying to measure, are you 0.7 or 1.1 or something, we would have a lot of them just the 1.0. So it would help with the administration. And we believe this is equitable because, those with more pay more. So we think we're, being consistent with the legislation here. So how do we calculate the rate? Well, in the simplest terms, you take the budget, or how much money you need, you divide it by the number of billing units you have, which are these equivalent residential units, or ERUs, and then that calculates the rate. So you can show here, if you needed $1 million a year, and you just click one more time, and you had 10,000 ERUs, divide one by the other, and your rate would be $100 per ERU. That would generate $100 a year if you were trying to generate $1 million a year in that example. So what is the budget we need here? What are the expenses? We're just sort of in the preliminary stage of this. We haven't cooked a final budget here together, but we know there's about $350,000 a year of pipe repairs that are needed. We know we have some proactive rehabilitation we want to start doing as we start looking at these systems proactively in the future rather than just reactive. And there's the capital projects we already identified on some of the earlier slides. One thing we're not looking to roll in to this budget at this time is things that are related to stormwater management, like leaf collection, street sweeping, inlet cleaning, and regulatory compliance. Some utilities include those things, everything in them. Some of them are just focused on just certain capital projects. There's a wide gamut of what folks decide to fund through their utility. So this graph shows on the left or vertical axis the amount of annual revenue that's generated, and on the right is based on what fee is charged. So this just shows a point on that line where if you were to charge $85 a year per ERU. So that's the typical residential, or what those 5,000 folks on the base fee would pay. It would generate about 712,000 in net revenue. There's some nuances to the calculation. If you think it doesn't quite add up to about collection rates, and there's a payment into the DEP fund. They have a clean stormwater fund that's 5% or 50,000, whichever is less of revenues collected in the stormwater utilities. So there's some things that factor into that, but this is based on an estimate of 9,288 total ERUs in Maplewood. And that accounts for assuming 10% of the ERUs are lost to the credit policy that's enacted. It hasn't been written yet. So how generous it is, or how easy it is to credit, or how difficult, hasn't been really defined yet, but there's just a budget of assuming 10% of those are off the top. So you might be curious, well, how does this rate, what do others charge for rates? There's over 2,000 stormwater utilities throughout the country. Pennsylvania is kind of your closest neighbor with lots of stormwater utilities. And if you click forward here, there's about 74. You know, I keep a little database myself with some information, and they range from about $24 a year to $240 a year for that typical residential property. It's a big range, right? It's an order of magnitude. And really you'll find it's not so much that one community knows how to manage stormwater that much more efficiently than another. It's just somebody's put in street sweeping and leaf collection and all these things into their budget. And others have said, well, it's only for certain maybe capital projects. And so the scope of those varies, but they average about $93 a year. So credit policy. It's important to understand that, you know, credits are how you can get a reduction on your bill. An exemption is something different. That's where your property just doesn't get a bill. The enabling legislation only exempts certain farmland property that doesn't really apply in this community. But we do see typically undeveloped properties in their natural state are exempted as well. But credits are where if you have a stormwater basin, you have a green roof, you have infiltration, rain gardens, whatever it is that the policy allows, you can get a reduction off of your bill. You click forward. You know, benefits of that are, well, one, it's complying with the legislation. We have to have a policy, but also it allows a sense of equity. So if somebody's had to build and maintains a stormwater pond, and somebody maybe with a much older property didn't have to do that, and they're not treating stormwater at all, they don't get a credit, but the one that does have that on their property can get a credit. So there's a sense of equity there. If you click forward, you know, the primary concerns with credit policy is, one, we don't want to make it too complicated. So the calculations on how you calculate your credit get too involved from either the applicant side or your side to evaluate them. And we also want to make sure we still have enough revenue at the end of the day after we give out these credits, that we haven't given too many away. So we've already, as I mentioned, accounted for an assumption of 10%. Typically, I see they end up averaging less than that, to be honest with you. For most communities I've worked with, more in the 3, 4, 5%. But because we haven't defined the, you know, what it is and all, we're using the 10% at this time. So now we're just going to go through some examples of what different types of properties would pay on an annual basis if we went with the $85. So it's a big caveat that hasn't been established as the final budget. But if we use $85 per ERU, you can just show in this residential neighborhood, there's a couple of properties that are 1 ERU, you know, they're the typical or average size, but a couple ones that are larger. Maybe they have a separate garage or a bigger extended patio area, a bigger house. And so you can see they can range up to, in this particular community, like 2.5 ERUs. So one property may 2.5 times as much as maybe another in this community, in this neighborhood. This is an example of a condo building where our typical practice, what we've observed, is most communities want to send one bill to the HOA, and then they can build that cost into the HOA fees back to the condo owners, rather than bill each individual condo owner a little slice of the impervious area on that property. But the total on this is 16 ERUs. Now there's 92 dwelling units here. So that only comes out to about $15 a dwelling unit per year at the $85 rate. This is some more just showing some other non-residential, including the municipal building here itself is 17 ERUs worth of impervious surface. When you look at the driveways and the buildings, get you a sense of kind of what the fees might be. And we just have one more slide after this. Just again, some larger, you know, commercial type properties can get up in the, you know, over 100 ERUs. So obviously their bills would be larger. And these rates here don't reflect any potential credits that, you know, these properties might get if they turn out to be eligible. So with that, really just the next steps in terms of going forward is, the DEP is strongly encouraging everybody to engage external stakeholders in this process, the public. Want to make sure you're getting enough feedback, input into the process along the way. They have some guidelines on their website that they're really trying to encourage people to follow. So we need to just continue to find how we want to do that. We do have a presentation with the Environmental Advisory Committee next week. We'll be doing it to get some of their input. I'm thinking mostly on the credit policy is an area where we typically seek that kind of feedback. And then we'll put a report that documents everything we've done together. And then, you guys will decide, do we want to move forward or not? Is this right for you? And if so, as you do the implementation, there's some additional steps in terms of putting an ordinance together, finalizing a credit policy, getting your billing database, all these types of things that would get to the point where we're actually getting bills out the door.
Great.
That's what we
Thank
wanted
you.
to cover.
No, I think you did a great job. Thanks.
Sorry. So does the statute that the enabling legislation, does that lay out exactly how the fee is decided on, or can it be done? Okay. So when you talk about the different size, and maybe I missed it. So is this based on the size of the lot or the amount of impervious coverage on each lot?
That's a good question. So this is based on the impervious surface. There's some aerial imagery and state provided polygons of impervious area. So it's actually looking at estimates of the driveway and the house, not the green spaces and stuff on the property.
Okay, so basically the smallest lots in town would have the base fee of 85, 1 ERU, right?
Right. I mean, I mean,
mean-
a small property that was 100% impervious could potentially have more than 3,200 square feet. I mean, if the lot was,
Mm-hmm.
5,000 or 6,000 square foot lot, it's a small lot. But if they had 100% of it impervious, that could actually trigger them out of that low base rate.
So is it possible to do this? And I'm just spitballing like we have an open space trust fund, right? That is like $1 per $100 of valuation on a property. So and that goes into a separate fund that's just used for open space. Could the stormwater utility be funded the same way, or is it better to do it? I worry a little bit about those who are on small lots paying the same as somebody on a larger lot, but you know what I'm saying? Like a house can only be so small, so somebody with a bigger lot is benefiting from having more pervious surface just by virtue of the fact that they have more. So I'm wondering what.
Right. Well, if someone has a big 2-acre lot, but if they still just have the
Mhm.
smaller house and driveway, then they could potentially pay just the same 1 ERU as someone on a smaller property. It really kind of ignores the way this rate structure would ignore the size of the lot. It really just focuses on the impervious.
Right, whereas the example I gave with open space sort of bases it on the value of the property as opposed to the impervious coverage. And I'm just thinking that may be more equitable. Just
Mhm.
asking your thoughts on that.
Typically people, when they look at these, say, assessed value isn't always a great indicator of stormwater runoff.
Mhm.
I mean, in a extreme example, if somebody had like a municipal parking lot, they own, or, a parking lot that they rented spaces in, but no buildings, no whatever, maybe the assessed value isn't that high because it's just asphalt, but it's all paved. It creates a lot of runoff. Whereas somebody else might have a high rise condo, with millions and millions of dollars of condo space, but the footprint's actually pretty small. So the stormwater runoff isn't high. So generally we don't see assessed value as the basis for a stormwater fee.
I understand that it's not necessarily the basis. My concern is, inadvertently charging people who have, live in a smaller house and less value because that's what they can afford, paying more because they have smaller property compared to people who have much larger property.
I think you also have to remember that this is commercial property too.
Yeah.
So
no,
in the
yeah, I-
commercials, you could have a building with a large parking lot
Right.
that would have a depressed value because there's really no value, there's no improvement to the parking lot. Although they're throwing off more rainwater than a house. I think what we need to do is to take a look at all the, are you saying there's 5,000 properties that would pay the one ERU? I think we need to take a look at that and see where those are compared to the other ones. And I think it's a valid point. But when we talked about, using ratables, it does throw it off a little bit because you have to factor in the commercial properties. And the commercial properties are based on sales, not values, and it doesn't take into consideration, again, the
Right,
the-
right.
the parking lots and all that kind of stuff, so.
Is it possible to, or legal to our lawyer, to kind of look at them differently, commercial different from how the fee is assessed, to look at commercial different than residential?
So I think the overall guidance of the statute, right, is coming to an equitable allocation. I mean, for example, one of the things that we have, I don't know if it's possible to quantify, is if we have properties that we know are problem properties with causing a great deal of runoff, which maybe isn't necessarily attributed to impervious coverage, but also to other site conditions.
Right.
So I think we'll go through right after this meeting and, kind of spitball different ways that we could try to comply with the statute and come up with.
Yeah, I mean, originally when it was talked about, it was like a rain tax, right? When that first came up? Yeah, nodding his head.
Yeah, it's sometimes referred to as that, but it's important to say it's not a tax, right?
Yes, well, I know it's a
Technically.
utility, but it, it feels like a tax, right, to the person who
Right.
charged it. So, yeah, those are some of the questions I just wanted to, throw out there. And I know we're not at all final, but I do worry a little bit about, that equity issue or that, overburden on one than the other issue because of, they naturally live in a smaller, which is obviously going to have more impervious surface than pervious.
I can just share, the city of Philadelphia has a rate structure that's different than most that I'm familiar with. They have two rates. They have a gross area rate, so the total size of your lot gets a fee that's lower. And then on the impervious surfaces, it has a higher rate. So it's a dual rate. Most folks don't do that. They just focus on the impervious and kind of ignore the pervious surfaces. But we all know, I mean, everything creates runoff in a big enough rain event, even grass and tree, other properties. So that was their basis for doing that. Most folks do that just because they want to keep it a little simpler and easier to say, and not now have two rates to manage and measure both. But, it's just another option out there if you really wanted to focus on the bigger
So
property.
Anthony, when you did your bell curve there, you have that geographically laid out. So you would know where those properties, the smaller properties are versus the ones that are larger. So we can
yeah,
take a look at it on a map. and
Yes.
See where in Maplewood
Yes.
the burden falls,
Yes.
right? Okay.
I would
Yeah, 'cause-
also want
Yeah,
to
'cause-
consider the fact that we also have residents who have mobility devices, and so they end up having more impervious surfaces because they can't get in their houses any other way. So for us to consider that as well as a part of it.
Did you hear? her?
No, I
Yeah,
missed-
no,
It's mobility surfaces that
Yeah,
are.
people who have ramps, people have
Oh,
more
yeah,
hard
that's all
surfaces
be
around the
done
house.
in the credit.
Right,
that's
that's
part
what
of
I was
what the
hoping
credit-
for, that the
So if they have a
credit would be-
ramp and they can't, they have to put a ramp out there because they need to get a wheelchair up or have to use, just be able to walk up and can't go upstairs. We could take that into consideration for credits and stuff.
yeah, I've not seen that done before,
Well,
but I.
That's why if we do something in New Jersey, we can
We're gonna
start,
do it.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
it's the difference between like a temporary handicap ramp, which is pervious
Right.
technically, as opposed to a concrete one.
Right. My read, again, the enabling legislation hasn't been tested yet, right? There's no.
Well, we'll test
utilities
it.
here.
Yeah,
It says the things you need to provide a credit for. It doesn't, my read of it doesn't say, and it's limited to those things.
That's why
But
we have this attorney.
I'm not an attorney. I want to make that clear. So we'll
We
need someone
have-
else to opine eventually on what we can put in the credit policy, or if there's another vehicle to achieve what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, so people need to get their rain barrels from Essex County.
Right.
I wanted to just concur with the mayor that I'm a little nervous that some of the homes that have smaller lots and lack of green space are going to get a higher tax when they're already almost disadvantaged with less green space on their property. That's not their fault. It's the only place that they can live. So I'm in favor of looking at those geographical maps and making sure, because I don't think it is equitable necessarily to have smaller plots with with a small house to pay a higher tax
Yeah.
than bigger lots because they have more grass and green space.
I want to be clear, there's no deduction somebody's getting for the grass on their property or the wood.
No,
At least
but
maybe through a
Formula, so if you have a
flat
bigger
rate is
plot with
hard.
more grass and,
No.
right? Like,
No.
no,
No, it's the size of your house.
the house and
Your
your,
driveway.
and your
Yeah.
driveway and your patio.
Right.
For a house that doesn't have much green space, has maybe two tiny squares in their front and a house and a very small patio in the back, they're going to get charged more because the formula is they
No,
have less runoff.
Not a percentage of the property that's impervious.
Right.
It's the total square footage.
Right.
So
Right,
if
but
it's a
The
small lot.
point is the one I made earlier,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
and
So we'll
it-
take a look at that.
Yeah.
So just so that house typically would probably have less impervious surface than a larger house, which would have a larger footprint, maybe a larger driveway and a larger patio. So they would pay maybe 1.5 versus somebody who would have a small. So it really
But
doesn't
we
have
have-
anything to do with the lot.
I think we can create this map. It may
Yeah.
help.
Yeah,
everybody
let's-
get
I think we should do.
So this is what we're going to do. So they are going Wednesday night to the Environmental Advisory Committee, and then we're going to ask the Environmental Advisory Committee for their advice to us as a township committee. And this is going to be parked as it has been in the Engineering, Public Works and Planning Committee. And we will do the deeper dive there, come up, back and forth to the Township Committee, answer those questions, go back, any more questions, keep digging. Because this is not going to happen this year. Whatever we implement would be at best start in 2025.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like if I'm in favor. I mean, I brought this up when I was chair of Engineering Public Works, I think, or maybe it was after, but whatever. I remember bringing it up like 3 years ago or something to try. Because knowing the cost of just trying to fix our stormwater, system is ridiculous. It's like super expensive. The other question I just had is, basing it on, so coming up with a budget first. What concerns me about that, and maybe is that we determine we want to raise $1 million. And would that be an annual thing? Like we always raise $1 million, or we set aside, because we're gonna need millions of dollars ultimately to fix our system. So I'm not quite sure I understand of working it backwards from a budget number, because what I don't want to have happen, I want the steady source of funding. Personally, I'm in favor of a utility, but I don't want it to get turned down a discussion every year on how much should our budget this year be, and then figure out, I'd rather it be more steady than that, so that then we say, okay, every year we have $1 million for that, and then we don't have to argue over which capital project we're going to fund in the capital program, and then,
Well-
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think as we've been thinking about it, we're thinking about the latter, that it would be a steady thing similar to Open Space Trust. That every year we know we have X amount of thousands of dollars coming in. The other thing is, as you say, we need millions of dollars, and these projects are larger than we're going to raise in a year. Otherwise, we would the fee would just be out of sight.
Yeah.
This money can be used to pay off a bond. So if we wanted to do, let's say, a $10 million project,
Right.
we can use this revenue, correct?
Pay
We can
down-
use this revenue
down
to
the
pay off that bond over 10 years so that we can do a major project or projects under a bond.
Right, just like we do with open space. We've
Right.
used that for obtaining land and paying off a mortgage.
And just to add to that, and we do have a bond ordinance on tonight, any utility, if it's determined to be self-liquidating, which is funny in this instance, but if it's determined essentially that you're bringing in enough fees to pay off all of your obligations, it does give you additional flexibility in certain of the bond limits and other obligations that you have with law. So
Mhm.
it could give you additional flexibility in financing capital.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
And just to add to what you're saying,
Could you pull the mic down? Yeah.
to add to what you were saying and what Tony, this is just preliminary numbers that we're presenting. This is our sort of our first cut. Input we received from your team on what we need to set as an ERU and what that dollar amount is. This is all a work in progress.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
This is
aware.
a first
Yeah.
cut. This is the type of input we want to hear from your team, as well as some of the advisory committees that we want to take that back and figure out what's a fair and equitable as the regulation, enabling regulation wants us to
Right.
implement here.
Understood. Thank you. And this it's set up as an ordinance, right?
Yes.
An ordinance that, and then our finance department sets up like a separate fund, sort of keeps it separate and apart from the regular tax revenue.
Yeah, and I think one thing on that is that we want to find the sweet spot. 85 has been talked about. It might be 85, it might be less, it might be a couple dollars more, but it has to be enough that we can make something different. Because if we don't raise enough to
Right.
start addressing some of these things, then it's not going to be practical.
I agree.
And I also think that we were talking about, let's set it and let it ride for a few years, 5, 6 years or so before we raise it again. Just see how it works, keep raising the money, keep spending it so that we learn from this. And so that we're not raising it every year, but we're just understand that for the next so many years, this is what we're going to get every year. We can do the planning and the financial planning, both the project planning and the financial planning on something like that.
And that raises another question to me. So we would assess this as part of our taxes like the OSTF is, or would it be bill for it?
Bill,
like
we were
the-
thinking, we were thinking that it could be in addition to the sewer fee.
Yeah.
So that
I
we're.
know everybody gets nice and mad when they get their sewer bill after they pay their taxes, so I don't know. if it's the best way
Well,
to-
I mean, we can look at the tax, I mean, the problem with the taxes is it's based on assessment.
Yeah.
So.
Right,
we'd
okay,
and-
that's
But
fair.
some
Right.
jurisdictions do put in their taxes. We talked about that. Since we do have the sewer fee structure, we thought about making it as a sewer fee. Definitely, we don't want to send out a third bill. A Tax
Correct,
bill, a
correct.
sewer
So it would
bill,
be
and a
on-
stormwater fee. So we've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Most people try to find some existing bill to put on, whether it's a tax bill or some other
Right.
bill. I do know some that have created a single annual stormwater standalone bill. That was just their preference.
And just to, all here, we have discussed in the past of even working out an agreement with New Jersey American Water, which is our
Yeah.
private water vendor, to build in our current sewer fee in their monthly fee. And so we might even think more broadly and say, is there a way that we can contract with New Jersey American so that people are paying this off monthly, both a sewer fee and a stormwater fee, as opposed to annually? So there's a lot of things.
As long as they don't take some of the money.
Well, they'll take some.
Yeah, that's why-
There'll be a fee. You'll be.
I
be sure
figured
of that.
that's
be
why
sure.
I said it. I
other
don't
thing
know.
is to consider if
I'd
there's
rather
any-
keep it all.
If there's any properties that have impervious surface that don't get a current water bill, they'd have to be added.
Yeah,
to the
that's-
account
yeah.
to that.
Right, right.
And that also is one thing about not building it into the tax base is that we do have churches and other nonprofit
That's another
organizations
question. Who
that
did
would be
this?
billed directly, just like we bill them for the sewer fee. New Jersey Transit,
Right.
the government, the public, other county and state governments, anything we have here, the utilities, we have reservoirs and all that stuff. So this would be something that they would have to pay as a fee that we don't get in their,
At all.
and even a pilot, the
Mhm.
entities that have pilots, they would still have to pay the full freight here.
And so I think really interesting is the churches and what about the school district? They're paving a lot of their land.
Let's not talk about.
So yeah, everyone gets their electric bill, their water bill, their
Get a water
stormwater
bill
bill.
too. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people who thinks that if we're not going to tax religious institutions or some nonprofits for property taxes, that at the very least they should pay things like this toward, like for our fire department, for our police, for all the things they use, our roads, our bridges, our storm sewers. So. Anybody else have any questions?
No, and besides my comment, I do think this is a great idea and I'm in favor of moving forward with it, just figuring out
Yeah.
that rate to make sure it's equitable.
Yeah, it's important that we get the funding for this, so. Thank you so much for your presentation and all
Thank
your
you.
work on this.
Did Richard want to say anything, or is he,
He's probably- Is he still there?
thank you, Richard, for joining us.
I'm still here, thank you.
Let's see if, is he going to come up? There we go.
There you are.
No, thank you. Committee member DeLuca knows I'm usually not this quiet.
Okay. I think you said you were very happy. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. You don't have to stay, but you're welcome to, I mean, if you got nothing better to do. All right, this brings us to public comment for agenda items only. Do we have any members of the public who are present tonight who want to say anything about Mr. McCoy or anything else on the agenda?
If any members of the public would like to speak on agenda items only, please raise your hand. You can be moved into public portion.
How do you know there's nobody coming up from the public?
Anybody coming up?
Here's somebody.
Sorry, they still raising their hand.
They still wait. You usually wait though.
You guys, I haven't attended a meeting for a while. A lot of things happened.
I'm
since-
sorry, what's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tracy Woods and I live at 253 Burnett Avenue. And it's been a little while since I attended a meeting. We have a new municipal attorney, lots of changes. The microphones are fancy now. But what a meeting to pick to attend, to really showcase, all of the things that are happening here. I'm all for glimpse and to honor Bob McCoy, who everybody who knows him knows what a, important force he's been to Maplewood sustainability. So it's great to see that so many great things are happening here.
Thank you. Are you speaking on behalf of Sustainable Jersey officially as?
Nah, that's just me.
Anyone else want to come up and say anything? Or on public comment or whatever?
Like, I'll take it.
Go ahead, Rich.
Let's not overdo it. Bob's still here.
Out the door.
So you.
But I do want to say, after having been working with Bob for all this time, I think you stated it well. Bob certainly deserves the recognition. And I think it's not easy for Maplewood to live up to being a sustainable place. It's a hard thing to do. This seemed, well, the presentation we just had seemed like a good direction to go in, but thank you for honoring Bob for all of this. We all
And-
of us on the
and your
environment committee
name-
appreciate it, believe me.
And your name is?
Oh, Rich Wenner, 37 North Terrace. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on any items on the agenda or on Zoom?
I'm now moving over Joan Crystal to panelist. Ms. Crystal, welcome to public portion. You may unmute yourself and have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. I just have one question regarding the presentation that we just heard. You mentioned concern about people who are in smaller homes. What about those seniors who are receiving senior freeze, which is really the way in which they can continue to live in town? Would some thought be given to them in setting the fees for the stormwater utility?
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. I think that could be considered
well-
with everything else.
Yeah, we'll put it into the consideration. I just,
For credit, maybe.
yeah, I mean, I don't know we'd have to take a look legally at what we can do with the credit, but
Right.
folks who have senior freeze, they do have to pay the sewer fee and their water fee and utilities. So, but we can certainly take a look at that and have a better answer for you. We haven't looked at it yet.
Anyone else, Mr. Ware?
Any members of the public joining us on Zoom would like to speak in public portion on agenda items, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with ordinances on final passage. Ms. Fritzen, 9A.
Mayor, 9A ordinance number 3114-24. It's an ordinance establishing a code of conduct for municipal facilities and/or municipal events. Implements code of conduct for municipal facilities.
You done? I could barely hear you. Okay, thanks. The ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, copies made available to the general public in accordance with the laws. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one.
If any members of the public joining us on Zoom would like to speak on this ordinance, please raise your hand. I see no hands, Mayor.
Thank you. This was for Mr. Daffis to move, so we'll do it for him. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole. Clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes,
um,
I was going to.
okay, you gonna explain? Okay, good.
I was going to take the roll call first, but I think that's fair. Let's take the roll call first, and after that, I'll explain what happened.
Right,
Yes.
Oh,
We're not, hold on, sorry, double.
Mr. DeLuca,
No,
Ms. Engel.
No.
Mayor Adams.
no, thank you.
Fails.
Yes, the reason for voting down this ordinance this evening is we have it on as a discussion item. After the ordinance was introduced, we had several discussions in committee level to make some changes to that, and our legal advisor, Ms. Cardidio, did amend the ordinance, and so we'll be discussing it further, and Ms. Engel will lead that discussion. Okay. Ms. Fritzen, next ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, 9B, ordinance number 3116-24 is an ordinance to amend chapter 123 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Fees, Municipal Pool. This ordinance will establish the municipal pool rates for 2024.
Okay,
Is this when I move it or no?
isn't this on for, this is on for
Final.
final,
Final,
that's what I
but it's
thought.
got-
Okay, this ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one in here, Mr. Weary, is there anyone online?
If any members of the public joining us on Zoom would like to speak on this ordinance, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion?
I move this ordinance to be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Right,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
yes,
Ms. Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We have a bond ordinance for introduction for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, appropriating the aggregate amount of $7,745,110 and authorizing the issuance of $7,408,060 bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on Tuesday, May 7th. Can I get a second? Ms. Egg?
Second.
Right,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
yes,
Ms. Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We move to administrative reports. Mr. Weary?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one report. The Department of Public Works started to deploy the streeteries today. So we deployed 4 streeteries along Maplewood Avenue and Baker Street, and we'll be putting out another 2 tomorrow. There's then just one additional that has requested it but isn't ready for setup. So that's good, and it went out pretty well. We have a few more planters that we want to put on order. We had greater demand for streeteries this year than we expected. We're still able to accommodate everybody now, but you'll notice on Baker Street, those are smaller but concrete bins that we put out there instead of the decorative planters. So we'll order a few more decorative planters. You'll see that on a resolution at the next meeting. But all in all, it went well and people are happy about it. I drove down Maplewood Ave on the way to the meeting and there were people eating outside enjoying them. So it's good to see.
Okay, that's good.
My
Well, it was a nice day. Do you have anything else?
That's all.
Nothing about pool or Deb?
Yeah, Miss. Emily
Okay,
will just-
I didn't know. We had
Yep.
kind of gone back and forth on
Wait a
that.
minute.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wary? Seeing none, we'll move to Ms. Credidio.
No report, Mayor.
Oh, any questions for our legal genius? Legal eagle, I should say. Nope. Thank you. Our clerk, Ms. Pris-
Yes, Mayor, just to report that we did conduct 8 event planning meetings since our last township committee meeting, and more to follow, couple of more, but we're getting caught up.
Okay,
And that's all that I have.
all right. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen? None. Everybody's mum tonight. Okay, we'll go to reports from elected officials. Committee Member Engel.
Thank you. I'm going to start, since Mr. McCoy is still sitting in the audience, I will start with the Rahway cleanup that the Environmental Advisory Committee is organizing this Saturday, April 20th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is rain or shine. Wear shoes that are okay to get wet. There's 2 check-in areas, 124 Donnell or the CHS parking lot. And we hope you all come out, rain or shine. It's a really fun day to help clean up the river.
So wait, it's what time?
This Saturday, April 20th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
I thought I usually went till 2, no? No, never mind.
This year, it's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I think last year was pretty cold and wet.
Yeah.
Next is the pool, which you just alluded to. So there's a couple of things on the pool. First, which Mr. Wary was going to report on, is that the construction is finishing up. We're going to start filling the pool, but we're still aiming for a Father's Day weekend to make sure that we pass all the inspections, everything's running smoothly. And if we can open earlier, we will, and we hope, but Father's Day weekend is still the target date to open. And then I also wanted to bring up here for discussion pool PAL fees, because this was not introduced with our original ordinance, but because registration is going to open up tomorrow, we wanted to see if we can just talk about pool PALs. So it's been discussed at the Health and Community Services meeting. It's been discussed last night at the Pool Advisory Committee, and Mr. Wary and I have been talking about it along with our Director of Community Services, Ms. Mancuso, and our Health Officer, Ms. Davenport. And what we have agreed upon is that we believe for this year, pool PALs, for those who need assistance for our pool fees, that we would give a 70% reduction of rates. Last year, we gave a bigger one. So they'd have to pay about 30% of the rate. And then they must qualify. They have to click a box and attest that the family qualifies for free and or reduced lunch. They receive Section 8 housing assistance. They're a beneficiary of SNAP or WIC. They're a beneficiary of NJ Cash Assistance Program. They receive SSI benefits. They're eligible for Medicaid or currently receiving unemployment. So any of those areas would qualify them for pool assistance.
Anyone.
Anyone. Yeah, you don't need to receive all of them. And so that was what we were thinking. We do have some money in the pool assistance, pool PALs line to help cover. We've talked to the health officer about really doing outreach with our school guidance counselors, with our seniors, to really make sure that we are reaching the families and the individuals who might need subsidies to join our pool to cool off this summer. So those are the recommendations that we came up with.
Well, I agree with having the qualifying parts or, a qualifying thing because, last year we did not. So I think it's important to just, there are people who want to take advantage of it without having to prove anything or claim that they're not doing so. And this is going to more people who actually need the assistance. I wouldn't mind it. I think last year it was 85%, which is really high. And now we're talking 70%. I just want to make sure that's enough. I know we talked about 50%.
So 50%, we talked about 50% of the pool advisory committee, and it still made it like $200 for a family to join the pool, which is still, if you're on any of these benefits, you cannot afford that. So when we looked at the 30%, it came out to an individual membership would be, this is the wrong list. The individual would be $79.65. A senior citizen would be $51.30. 2 adults or an adult and child would be $114.75. A family, 2 adults plus 1 to 7 children, $133.65. A family with 2 adults and 8 plus children, $157.95. And a family plus caregiver, $157.95.
And could you just clarify, is this limited to a number of, like, an amount of money that the township is putting in toward the fund? So
So currently, we have $25,000 in the pool assistance fund. So once that runs out, we wouldn't be able to cover, but we have in the past promoted our Pool Pals fund. And so the idea is that we would promote that again and try to get people to donate to cover any families that were on their wait list, as well as to build that line. So possibly, if we raise enough money, perhaps it can roll over till next year so that we'll be able to keep funding pool assistance without us maybe having to always put in the money.
okay. Anybody have any questions? Me? Okay.
So procedurally, do we have to do anything in order for
We have to
house
vote, no?
applications to open up tomorrow? Do we
By
have to-
resolution.
Take a vote.
I assume.
I think you should move it.
Yeah, so I move that Pool Pals, pool assistance subsidy be 30% of the rates that we just passed today on our ordinance.
Second,
Ms. Kreip,
Yes.
Mr. Luca,
yes.
Ms. Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. You have anything else to report?
Oh,
I know, I felt like a.
I know.
official
Do I
thing
have
at
anything else to
seven.
report? That was it because my other stuff is on the discussion item.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions for Ms. Engel? No?
No.
Okay, we'll move to Deputy Mayor Craig.
All right, I'll try to make this fast.
'Cause you can't
YouthNet
vote.
is seeking new mentors as well as our summer internship mentor program, which began, well, they're starting applications being accepted by CHS CalSlink offices. Mentors need to visit somayouthnet.org/internship to offer your services as being a mentor this summer for our high school students looking to get work experience. The Soma softball, baseball, and kickoff parade is this Saturday also. We've got a lot of Saturday things. That's going to be at New Waterlands Park in South Orange at 9 a.m., immediately followed by the Habibi Fest at the Woodland from 12 to 4, a celebration of Arab American Heritage Month. So come on out and see the vendors, listen to the music, enjoy the food. And then finally, Saturday, April 27th from 10 to 3 p.m. is CHS's Maker Madness, the annual STEM fair. So if you haven't gotten your robotics nerdy geek on in a while, come out to CHS and be a part of the approximate 1,000 people who come to that every year. So come on out for that. And that is my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Craig? Nope, she's got 3 out of 4 of my things. Go ahead, Mr. DeLuca, would you like to take the 4th thing I have on my list?
It depends. You tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items. First, I just want to thank everyone who was involved in the 47th Annual Soma Interfaith Holocaust Remembrance
Yes,
March and
great.
Service. We had over 50 people in the march and 200 plus people at the service at Morrow Church. It was a very moving service. And I do want to thank, to be totally honest, there was some concern that there would be protesters and what have you, but I do want to thank the folks, the ceasefire folks who have been demonstrating in either of our towns over the last few months for respecting the Holocaust service. And I think that was important. And I think it goes to what we've been asking is that we can disagree, but we should be doing it respectfully. So I do want to thank you for respecting the march and the service. I think that was important. This Thursday night, the 18th at 7:30 p.m. at the Community Center in DeHart Park, the Hilton Neighborhood Association's annual Township Committee Candidate Forum will take place. And I have to tell you, I was the moderator of the first Hilton Candidate Forum for school board back about 29 years ago.
Was that about?
About 150 years
20
ago.
years.
Before Maplewood was even a speck in anyone's eye, I was there. So, yeah, we told someone today that, if you do a lease for 100 years, that would be fine. I'll be the only one left on the township committee.
Yeah, yeah. I have.
And then the third thing I want to say is, it's amazing how it's hard to believe, but information travels. That's wrong. So I want to give you the clearest information about the library. The library is going to open in mid-October. Going to have a
Of
grand
2020.
opening in mid-October of this year. The windows are in, they're fantastic looking from the inside. You can see them from the outside. But when you're in there and you see the park and the train station and everything, it's just incredible. So construction will be completed at the end of August. And then it'll take about 6 weeks to move all the books and materials in there and stock the shelves and get everything going. And that'll take, as I said, that should take us right into mid-October. There are some dates in October which are blackout dates due to religious holidays and other holidays. So we're looking at, as I said, somewhere between the beginning and mid-October to get a grand opening. So it will open. It'll be fantastic. And so if you haven't given, we're still accepting contributions because we could use the support. So I just want to give you I'm there every Friday and I see the progress. It's just incredible. So that's it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. DeLuca? Seeing none, you got my last item there. Garden State Art Weekend opens this weekend at 1978 Art Center. Friday is from 4 to 8 p.m. I can't believe they're starting as 4. That seems early, but that's for wine and beer, like opening. Also internally, we've talked about some concerns people have had with residents feeling, I've spoken to a couple of our rabbis and concerned residents who are feeling unsafe. And I've asked the administration and our assistant administrator to make the statement that we issued, I guess it was about a month ago, by the Township Committee on our website and on any social media that we have. And it's on the looping part of the website. Tomorrow it'll be what?
And on our website as well.
Okay, I just wanted, I thought it was worth magnifying the statement, because, time goes, people don't even know, and just to remind folks in town. So I'm just going to read it here, just for the record again, just to remind our community. In Maplewood, we stand for inclusivity, respect, and understanding. Recently, some protesters who are exercising their First Amendment right to free speech have used language that is hurtful and unnerving to many of our neighbors. We urge all participants in public protests to refrain from engaging in hate speech or discriminatory behavior targeting any group, including our Jewish and Muslim community members. We must remember that freedom of expression does not justify the spread of harmful rhetoric, nor can it be used to incite violence against any individual group. We are mindful of the close connections many community members of many faiths have with Israel and Palestine. We can publicly protest against the war and express our anger or support for one side or another, but we must not use phrases or words that will hurt or frighten those on the other side of the issue, causing them to feel unsafe in their own town. Maplewood needs to be a safe space to disagree. We do not and will not ever accept bullying, harassment, discrimination, and bias of any kind in our community. Local residents and outside actors inciting vitriol amongst neighbors has been documented here and across the country. Let's not buy into the social discord narrative that is gripping our nation. We are Maplewood, home to all. We must be a safe space in these turbulent times. The Maplewood Township Committee strongly condemns the behavior and the use of language that tears the community apart rather than bring us together. In our desire for peace in the world, let's start with peace here at home. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and please remember that, community. We are all here. We should all respect each other. So does anyone have any questions for me?
Nope, thanks for doing that.
Yes. And that's all I have. So we have a consent agenda.
No. discussion
No,
items.
sorry. Damn, I was trying to get out early. I think we're going to pass the discussion items to the next meeting. No, discussion items. So we have code of conduct. Ms. Engel.
Yes, so I'm filling in for Mr. Daffis, although we talked about what I thought I was mentioning. So we did not pass the code of conduct ordinance that was up for second reading because we had a lot of discussion here as well as in committees. So we've revised it to really focus on our youth programs and just making clear about the kinds of conduct, anti-bullying, and just respectful play and respectful talk amongst coaches, kids, people who are at our youth activities. And so I think it's been circulated and stuff. So I don't know if it's any questions or anything else I was supposed to mention, but that's why we did not pass the earlier one, was because we made a lot of changes so that it'll be up on our agenda again.
So
I
if
think
no
next
one here has any issues with the updated ordinance, then we can put it on for introduction at the next meeting. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So demolition ordinance, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I guess about a year or so ago, the mayor, as the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, began working with commission members to think about drafting an ordinance which would protect potential historic buildings. And this really was prompted by a couple of demolitions that occurred of buildings that we really didn't have a chance to decide whether or not we even wanted to think about them being historic. They came down. So we are now at the point where we have a draft ordinance, and I'll just, you all received a copy of this, but I'll just run through it quickly. This sets up a demolition review process. So someone who wants to demolish a residential structure
More than 50%.
by either 50% or more would have to have a demolition review. And this would be done by the Historic Preservation Commission. And there are various notices that are required to adjacent property owners, putting a sign on the building, and notifying the commission that they intend to file a demolition permit. So even before you file a demolition permit, you have to give notice that you're doing that. Then the demolition permit goes in. Our building department would determine when it is a complete application. And then once it's deemed complete, 10 days after, within 10 days after that, it gets sent to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission then has 45 days to determine one of two things. One, if they determine that the structure, and we're talking about a primary structure, so it's the house. It's not a garage, it's not a shed. So it's the house. And that's important because there was a concern about what if you wanted to demolish a portion of your garage to build an accessory dwelling unit. We didn't want to have a contradiction because in our master plan, we're promoting accessory dwelling units. So once the Historic Preservation Commission gets this, it has two things, two decisions to make. One, if it determines that the structure is not worthy of historic designation, then it submits a no further action letter to the building department. It says, no problem if they want to demolish it 50% or more. We don't believe there's any potential historic designation. It's not worthy of historic designation, so it can move forward. If the commission determines that the structure may be worthy of historic designation, then it has to have a review, a meeting with, in which they would decide whether or not to begin the nomination process. So all that has to happen within 45 days. So here it is. I put in my application. Let's say I want to demolish this house, 50% or more. I want to blow out the back of it or something, or take it completely down. Before I even bring the permit upstairs to the building department, I've got to put a notice out. I've got to send letters to 200 feet from my property. I got to notify the commission. Okay. I then come in and submit the paperwork. It gets deemed complete. So then 10 days after that, it goes to the commission. Then the commission has 45 days. So all that we're talking about close to 70 days is a process. So a little over 2 months. So once the commission determines that it's worthy of historic preservation, then it goes into the normal process that we have on the books for the nomination process. And that is the commission may make a nomination proposal for the designation of a historic site. And then you have to notify the owner. There has to be a report done. There has to be a public hearing. And there has to be, the various reasons why it would meet the criteria. So that would take some time. And I want to, it's important. I just want to go, reason I'm emphasizing the time is because I want to go back to that in a moment.
Good.
The other thing that the proposed ordinance does is it allows for an informal, non-binding meeting with the commission. So say I wanted to think about demolishing this house. Before I even start the process, I would go to the commission and say, hey, let's sit down and I want to talk to you about this. So it gives me a sense of, is there going to be opposition? Do you think it is maybe worthy or not worthy? Blah, blah, blah. So that has to happen within 30 days. So again, this review process is a way in which we can do our due diligence as a municipality to make sure that if a property has some degree of historic designation or potential historic designation, that we have enough time to review it and make a decision going forward. So when we reviewed this in our code committee, two issues came up. One was, we say in here that you have to send the notice to your neighbors by certified mail. It was suggested by the Department of Community Development that we include regular mail too, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's, that's just a technical thing. But then the question became, well, what happens if if the commission determines that they do want to nominate the process? Because there's nothing in the underlying historic designation process that is a timeline. So what we suggested at the code committee is that we add some kind of a time period so that if you decide that you want to consider this for historic designation, that you have to do it in a certain period of time so that you're just not stringing this applicant on forever. So I would suggest that we look at another 45, that within 45 days, they have to have the nomination before the commission. So that at most, we're now adding another 45 days to that 70-day or 60-day period that I mentioned before. And it allows us, it puts the onus on the commission to get their act together if they want to pursue it. And that we protect the interest of the property owner. We also protect the interest of the town.
Okay, thank you for that long overview.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
No, it has to be thorough, but I do want to clarify a couple things for, there aren't that many demolition permits that are asked for. So this isn't like every time somebody wants to do an improvement to their house, this is going to kick in. It's only when it's more than 50% of the building. And the reason that's important is because we don't want to make anything onerous, but on the other hand, we don't want to make it so easy to just tear down a house without it being looked at. And I think, all of us remember a year and a half ago or so when what would have been probably designated a historic house, but wasn't on the list, was torn down and rebuilt. So just trying to, because this does happen in Westfield, there's been something like 1,000 demolitions over the last decade. And built in their place are usually larger, so, and this can happen. So we're not trying to stop anything necessarily with this, but just maybe slow it down so that we can take proper look at what the house is, what the property is that's being possibly demolished. So does anyone have any discussion on this besides me and Vic?
Mayor, also, this is external demolition, exterior demolition. So if you wanted to, let's say,
Yes.
and do an interior demolition to widen a room or converge a kitchen with a dining room or something like that, this would not apply. This is just to the external
Yeah.
part of the building.
Okay. 50% of the whole house.
Right.
Did you have?
So,
Can I just clarify? So basically, if you want to demolish 50% or more of your house, you could first say like, hey, HPC, will you just chat with me a little bit? Here are some of my thoughts, whatever. And then when you want to, you submit this application to them. They have 45 days to rule on it. And then if they decide that it should be a historic house, they have 45 days to do that.
that's what.
And then we're done. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right now, the draft doesn't.
No, I know. Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
That's what you just
Clarify
said.
though,
that
it
we're-
does-
yeah.
you put in you come to the building department to get a permit and that gets reviewed.
Right.
And then they say, then it gets flagged if it's more than 50% of the building, and then it goes through that process. So it kind of goes through zoning and historic preservation at the same time. For that initial
Yeah.
review.
Thank you.
Nope. Okay,
So, can we introduce this at the next meeting?
sure.
So I'm going to bring this to historic preservation tomorrow night with the recommended changes, the regular mail in addition to certified, and the 45-day. And assuming, everything's okay, I will work with our attorney to do the final draft, and we'll introduce it at the next meeting.
Okay, Mr. DeLuca, you have community energy plan.
Are you moving me along, Mayor?
Well, it's your turn.
Ah,
I'm just following the agenda. At least
Okay.
I'll let you talk. I was ready to.
Thank you, Mayor, thank you.
Consent agenda before.
I mean, you can split these up so I don't have to go run after one another, because I know my colleague here gets a little nervous when I have all these items. So I want to hold up our Maplewood, New Jersey Community Energy Plan. You can't see it because we've got the wide view, but in any event,
Zoom in on Mr. DeLuca.
it'll be on our website, so you don't need to look at this. You can
I would
actually
really like
do
to
it.
see it zoom in.
Here we go. Okay, so here it is. Our it is 49 pages, and let me just give you a quick rundown of what it is, and Mayor, just so you know, it'll be an extensive rundown here. So,
Okay,
and I just want to recognize Tracy Woods and Bob McCoy, because without them, this would have not happened. Tracy brought it to
that's
us
for sure.
from Sustainable Jersey and gave us the ability to move forward. We argued about different points, what we wanted, what we didn't. And then Bob brought it to the finish line, working with our consultants to get this report out. So, and when I get to the end of my 2.5-page comments here, you'll understand why this is important to do. So about 2 years ago, the Township Committee, on the advice of Sustainable Maplewood, expressed its support to create a community energy plan and to apply for a planning grant from the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. And lo and behold, we did. We got a $10,000 planning grant from the BPU, Board of Public Utilities. And what is the community energy plan? Well, it's an implementation and action plan. And it is designed to generate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions for both municipal operations, our responsibility, and the wider community. It's important that we talk about what we can do to try to get the wider community to reduce its energy use. And it supports the New Jersey Energy Master Plan, which has a goal of getting to 100% clean energy by the year 2050. So in Maplewood, approximately 2/3 of energy use is in the residential sector, mostly from heating our buildings, our homes, and from vehicle travel. And although municipal energy use is only a small part of that, just a few percent, the township plays an important role as a leader and setting an example for the rest of the community. And therefore, we actually have an outsized role in this community energy plan. There's a lot of things that we as a town need to do to show that we can reduce our energy use and therefore encourage both the residential sector and the commercial sector to do the same. So I want to thank my colleagues on the Community Energy Plan Working Group that put the plan together. I mentioned Bob, Tracy, we have Vita Truesdale, Rich Werner was here before, Riju Sen, Andrew Howe, and Annette De Palma. And we worked on this, and we had a number of meetings and put it together and did a lot of back and forth on editing and really thinking through what would make sense. And we also want to acknowledge the work of the Rutgers Center for Green Building, which we contracted with to provide information on Maplewood's existing building stock and energy use and also to show us the potential for more solar installation throughout town. Now, this is not going to be a report that sits on the shelf. This was not what we did it for. It's an action plan, and we've asked the Township Business Administrator to share the plan. It's in our resolution, to share the plan with department heads to ensure that municipal policies and practices are developed and implemented in a manner that's consistent with the CEP. So what is that? What do we have in here? What are initiatives? And I mentioned it's going to be on the website, but what are the initiatives? One, we're going to purchase more alternative fuel vehicles. Two, we're going to improve the efficiency of our municipal fleet and the non-municipal automobile fleet. We're going to work with businesses and residents to think about how they're using their vehicles and what alternatives they might have. We're going to support zoning and permitting for solar installation, making sure it's easy and that we encourage that. Instituting a town-wide solar purchasing program. Supporting participation in community solar so that no one in town, no sector in town is left out of it. We're going to upgrade energy efficiency in our municipal buildings. We're going to do an energy efficiency outreach campaign that's going to target, as we have before through our SEA program, the residential structure. And we're also going to work with the commercial structure, promoting energy efficiency. We're going to make new energy investments in municipal buildings, and I'm going to get to that at the end. We're going to adopt energy storage policies, and we're going to train our first responders and other staff on how to respond to emergencies with electric vehicles and charging stations. You know, this is something that's very important because we want to protect our workers, and learning how to deal with emergencies when you come up to an electrical fire, or electrical vehicle fire or crash, or even a charging station is very important, just like we did with solar collectors.
Right.
Because there's a way to do it, and we have to do that. So tonight we have Resolution 156-24. It's pulled out as a special standalone resolution because we are adopting the Maplewood Community Energy Plan. And by adopting this plan tonight, we are on target to submit an implementation proposal to the state in late May. And our submission is going to be to make a new energy investment in the police and courts building. What we plan to do is install an energy efficient heat pump that will cost nearly $700,000. So we are going to make the application to get this grant so that we can do this. We're committed to moving forward. We're actually in our capital budget tonight. We have money in there to put a heat pump in the greenhouses that are behind us.
That's right.
So that's another step. And we said, we're going to focus for this grant on the police and court building. So we're excited about the community energy plan. We believe it'll open the door to future funding opportunities. I mentioned one, we think there's going to be more coming down. And it also advances our master plan emphasis on environmental sustainability. So I hope we're all going to support Resolution 156-24. And if you don't mind, Mayor, I'm just going to invite if Bob McCoy or Tracy Woods wants to come up and add anything that I might have forgotten or just want to say how wonderful this is, please feel free to come on up and say it.
Yeah, he's pretty thorough, so you might want to just talk about how wonderful it is.
Hop on it.
Still on? Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple things I wanted to say was, one is, one of the things that's been good about participating in this, it's going on for, I don't know if you gave the starting date, but it's been a year and a half, how long have we been talking about? Some of the things are, like you mentioned, are already getting adopted. You're excessively modest about the library, but you know, the library is really an example of the kind of thing we're doing. And I think that's important, that things are already, the implementation is already starting. And like you said, the bond has actually a number of items that are relevant to that. One of the things that just I think is important for this is that the broad philosophy of it is electrify as much as we can, because you can clean up the supply of the electricity supply is part of the state's plan to clean that up. And so the idea is you can clean the electricity, but you can't clean burning gas and fossil fuels. No matter what you do, they're still going to have emissions, and they're going to continue to damage the climate. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to say, which was important about this, is we've been working on this as a town for since 2006 at least, trying to find a way to make a significant dent in our climate impact. And we've gone from almost too broad a goals. And then other times we've done like narrowly focused, a solar campaign or something like that. This brings it together and starts to be the kind of comprehensive thing that can have an impact. And in that context, one of the things is that it also puts us in communication. This is a BPU and Sustainable Jersey project. It puts us in communication with those. We're responding to their plan and saying, what do we have to do locally to make this work, to make their plan work? If they put 100% clean electricity, and we continue to demand gas from our heaters, it won't work. So they're communicating that way, but we are also communicating back to them what we're going to need as a community. And I think we found in doing this that there are some neighborhoods that are already reaching their capacity for installing new solar. So they need to be thinking about the grid. And if we go to all electric heat in the next couple of decades, which we really need to do, we're going to need support from the grid. We're going to need support on how to afford the electricity. There's various things like that. So it's a back and forth communication, and this plan the grant process does that. So those are the sort of in addition to all what you said, which covered it really well. But those are some sort of context that I think is important to think about in all this. So
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Ms. Woods, would you like to say anything?
253 Burnett Avenue. Just one quick note is just also again to, as longtime volunteer working in sustainability issues in Maplewood, the ongoing support of the staff and the Township Council has been so great to help support all of these initiatives. And remember, Chief Duvall was the police chief that, adopted the first electric vehicle in the state of New Jersey.
Right.
For the police department, which, and he also talked to other police chiefs and, was a proud part of Maplewood's sustainability legacy and had a big impact on police departments around the state accepting that technology. So that's part of our proud legacy here as well.
And your Sustainable Jersey hat for a second. They are allowing credits, are they not, for working on credits for gas-powered leaf blowers for municipalities that restrict the use of those?
Yes.
They are.
I know, you can get up to 30 points.
Yes, and I'm on that committee and I made sure it's retroactive.
That's right. I just wanted to point that out. We may be getting that bumped up to platinum. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. So the next discussion item is changes to redevelopment area 3. You want me to go through them? I'm tired of talking. Sure. Okay. So redevelopment area 3 on Springfield Avenue is I don't know how to describe it. Like what it's like by Maplewood Tire.
And between Maplewood Tire and Walgreens, between Vermont and Burnett.
You're right. Okay. So the current plan calls for 11, includes 11 tax lots. We are adding an additional one, so there'll be 12 tax lots. So we've changed the plan. The proposed changes are to include that other lot, number 158, and then all but, instead of 2 lots, all but 3 lots in redevelopment area 3 will have frontage on Springfield Avenue. The permitted uses, we just expanded a little bit to include 3-bedroom units that are permitted to meet the township's affordable housing requirements, which was not in the redevelopment plan years ago when it was written. Also to include eat-in and/or takeout restaurants, not including fast food restaurants, and including health spas, health clubs, and wellness centers. The area and bulk requirements, the change we're looking for him proposing here is still 4 stories in height, but to change 50 feet to 55 feet. The building height is measured pursuant to section 271 3B, definition of building height contained in the township zoning ordinances, and we would add the building's highest point shall include screenings around chimneys, mechanical equipment, elevator towers, and flagpoles none of which shall extend above the highest point of the building. And then lastly, the architectural design standards, well, second to last. All exterior construction work, including but not limited to sign or awning installation, shall be approved by the Springfield Avenue Partnership prior to site plan review by the planning board, which is those of us who've been on the planning board a while know the bumps in the road that we've hit when reviewing a proposed site plan approval for the exterior improvements and the facade and all that kind of stuff, and it always has to go before the Springfield Avenue Partnership or the Maplewood Village Alliance. And so this is nice that it calls it out ahead of time, so it'll go to the Springfield Avenue Partnership Design Review before coming to the planning board, which is really helpful in getting it moving at the planning board level, especially since the planning board's not really supposed to opine on design. So off-site parking requirements, this plan, the redevelopment plan did call for 1.5 spaces per unit, and it's being proposed to 1 space per unit. So I'm in favor of all these changes. We've discussed them, but I'm looking for any questions of people who haven't been.
Mayor, I think our plan was to authorize the Department of Community Development and our redevelopment attorney to negotiate these changes with Somerset Development and then bring them back to us.
Okay,
So I would.
we
move
weren't
that-
going to change them ahead of that?
No, they're going to
Okay.
negotiate a redevelopment agreement. I'm sorry, a change to the plan, and then we'd have to bring the plan back to get, then the planning board has to look at the plan. So it's a very
Yeah.
detailed process. We have to get that moving. So I don't know who we're using as a redevelopment attorney. Someone in your office? Okay, yeah. So if we could, I would move that we authorize.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, under permitted uses, maybe you just said this and I missed it, but it says C, professional offices, and D, offices, but not on the street level.
Professional offices are usually things like real estate offices or things that
Thanks.
generate more pedestrian, like dentist office maybe, or where people are coming and going more frequently than an office where, you're an accountant or something like me.
An accountant,
Like
you
I
have
have my
people
own office, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's more of a pedestrian generator. That's kind of the thought process, or at least it was once upon a time, decades ago.
I mean, I could nitpick that a little bit, but I won't. I'll leave that to the attorneys.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Never heard that before. Professional or off, because like you're a
Yeah.
SID director, so I would think you ground level people do come in and
So
out.
we have it defined.
taxes.
We have it defined. in the code.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Defined in it's a defined term, both offices and professional offices are defined in the code.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so.
So like, my office, or somebody's office, like,
Yeah.
who's just whatever.
I hear with like real estate offices or banks, that's one thing, but there's other offices that does generate street traffic that could be considered, a first floor office space versus second floor. So that, I just didn't,
Yeah.
I've never heard professional office, but office, but not
Yeah.
street level is contradictory to me.
It is defined in the code, but I don't have it in front of me. Do you have it?
No.
I'll look. Thank you.
So I would move that we authorize community development and our redevelopment attorney to meet with Somerset Development and make these changes in the redevelopment plan for areas, actually it's areas 1 and 3, and then bring it back to us for review and action.
I'll second. Now take a vote there, Ms. Fritz.
Ms. Cripe,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Ms. Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. This brings us, did we vote on the resolution for the?
We have not.
Okay, it feels like we did.
I move 15624.
There you go. That's the resolution to adopt the community energy plan. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second, but are we going to go back to the Greenway discussion item?
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that.
Okay, sorry.
Greenways.
Oh,
You
I'm
skipped mine.
sorry.
Oh, I thought you guys were going.
I'm not in a
back to-
hurry or
Okay.
anything, but
Deb and I were looking
I
at each
keep
other.
trying to miss pass.
That's okay.
Withdraw
It's
my
an
vote.
important one.
I withdraw my
Well,
vote.
let's vote on it since it's moved and
Okay.
seconded.
Ms. Cripe,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Ms. Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes, thank you. We have one more discussion item that I
Yay.
passed over accident.
Yes.
Engel.
Thank you. So this is about the Greenway. So the Greenway's been talked about, I guess, for like over a decade. When I first moved here, I remember hearing about it, and then it came up in the Environmental Advisory Committee on like my first meeting in my first month of my first term, and I've been working on it pretty much ever since. And the sticking point has always been, so South Orange has already done phase 1. And I can report that they have all phases either done, out for bid, or under negotiation for their greenway, which would connect South Orange to Maplewood. And Maplewood's sticking point has always been that in order for us to connect with South Orange, which has so many benefits, a bike and walking path, which will help get kids to school, help get people to the trade, help keep cars off the street, make it safer for biking and walking. But the school district land lies in the middle to connect Maplewood with South Orange. So I guess it's always been stuck here, but now somebody in this room developed a great redevelopment plan for a community give back for a developer of the West Parker development to fund the repair and improvement of one part of this proposed greenway that connects from like the parking lot down to Parker, Jefferson. I'm directly challenged, as Mr. Wary has learned, from Jefferson. And then the other piece is through the student parking lot to connect by the Chisowitz Field, which would connect us then to South Orange. So the school district has in their possession a agreement from the developer for a construction easement for them to improve that portion of the path. They've had that agreement since May of 2023, and there's a deadline coming on May 15th or 16th, that if that agreement between the developer and the school district is not signed, then the developer does not improve that pathway. Instead, gives Maplewood $100,000 for us to use to work towards our connectivity and circulation. But we don't want that money because we want to build this greenway and we want them to do the work. So we have been talking to the school district at our municipal partnerships. Our director of community services has been talking to Mr. Burnside, Mr. Wary has been talking to everybody. We've been trying to fill them in and try to get this moved along. With this impending deadline, we feel like real urgency. So one of the questions that came back from the school district was about maintenance of it. So we negotiated with them that Maplewood could maintain this portion of the greenway, and Ms. Credidio and Mr. Wary created a shared services agreement, which we sent to them, but we put it on the discussion item here because procedurally I felt like we need to talk about it and get us all on board. So Mr. Wary, I can turn it over to you to talk about the specifics, or if you guys all have it in your email, or if you have any questions.
I just first want to move to extend the meeting past 9:30 since.
Second.
Right,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Engel.
Yes.
Mayor Adams.
Yes.
Did you send out the shared service agreement?
Yeah.
It was
On Friday.
on Friday, just after the committee agenda.
Can you just briefly run through it?
Yes. So high level, the ownership of this, so this is the parcel as Ms. Engel described between West Parker.
School
and
parking lot,
Jefferson.
school kids park.
Yes, but it includes the driveway south, which will be improved by the developer, but then we would be responsible subsequent to that for maintenance. So the agreement covers ownership, which remains with the school district, maintenance, which would be the responsibility of the township. So that means things like filling in potholes, sweeping, plowing in the snow, icing, or salting with the ice. We want to make sure that, we're now reserving this space as a greenway and it can function. And the township would take.
Is this plowing the entire lot or just
Nope,
plowing the path? Okay, just
the
clarify.
proposed Greenway. We're clarifying.
Yes.
I'm sorry, when you say the Greenway, you're talking about that stretch between the parking lot and Jefferson?
It'll
Because,
be the whole stretch because there's the
Be a
piece
connection.
between the parking lot and Jefferson.
no, I understand that, but would we just plow that one stretch in the parking lot and then the school district would plow the rest of the parking lot?
That's right, because this will
It'll be
be
a-
separated a bit.
Yeah.
Right, so
Oh,
we're-
okay.
We're proposing, at least initially, we'll separate the parking lot from the greenway with the concrete wheel stops that you'd see like in a parking lot.
Wheel stop.
And so, and what they may deem to be sufficient for paving and salting and plowing a parking lot may be different than what we'd want to do for a pedestrian pathway.
For a pedestrian walkway.
That's right. That's right. And so we'll maintain that. We'll take liability over it since we are the ones maintaining it. Just that portion and just when it's been being used as a pedestrian walk bikeway. And the term of the agreement is for 10 years or 4 months' notice. We want the school district to feel somewhat comfortable with this. And so, we want to give them some opportunity to get out of it, should they want to, only so that we can get them into it, right? Because we think that's in our best interest.
Do you have anything to add, Ms. Credidio?
Just that the the term, we chose 10 years because the Shared Services Act suggests 10 years unless there's some compelling reason to pick a different term.
And what happens after 10 years? It just gets renegotiated?
And all of this is dependent on them maintaining that identified swath of property as open to the general public. If for some reason at any point they cease to do that, we would cease to have any obligation to maintain.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Is there general agreement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
this is, I mean, the school district has been the biggest pain on this because they
Yeah,
have talked a big game and haven't done anything. And,
That's correct.
So I'm glad.
I would totally
It's a
agree.
good
with that.
solution.
Yeah, and when we were talking about this part, I suggested it in the developers
Ridiculous.
agreement.
We got a developer. They got,
Somebody do improvements to their own
Yeah.
property and
their,
what.
their students now walk on that stretch.
That's right.
Which we're going to improve for their students to walk on that stretch in a safer way.
Right.
So,
Right.
And it helps with their integration plan, speak of the way the placements
Every-
are going, because it gives people a safe way to get to the high school. And
Right, where they don't have to go on
Lauren or
Valley
Maplewood, or to
Street.
get to Psalms or to get to MMS. It just creates a safe walking route and helps get cars off the road and might help with their busing. And there's just so many benefits
Train
to it.
station, people
Yeah.
are coming that way.
Yep.
okay.
So do we
Sounds
need to
good.
We
vote
need
on it or anything? Like, do we need to?
Do we need a motion or anything?
No, right now, this is just a draft agreement. We will discuss this agreement with a group from the school district tomorrow at their FFT
FFT.
meeting. And if they are in agreement or if they require revisions, we'll go through that process and we'll bring it back before this body.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Engel.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work on that. It was.
Thank you, Mayor.
I move the consent agenda.
Second. Can I get a motion for the consent?
Right,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Engel?
Yes.
Mayor Adams?
Yes, thank you. Public comment on any subject matter is up next. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the Township Committee? Hi, Dave.
Nope.
Would you like to look online?
Yes, if any members of the public joining us on Zoom would like to speak in public portion, please raise your hand now. I see no hands, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Right,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Engel?
Yes.
Mayor Adams?